It will officially be 14 straight years for the Buffalo Sabres on missing the playoffs following Montreal's win last night. Paul Hamilton does have more on yesterday's win, but ultimately missing the playoffs. Again, up at our website, WGR550.com. Do stay tuned. Paul will join the show at 5 p.m. But for the Sabres, they do have 5 more games this year, starting with Columbus tomorrow night. Tonight, though, just 5 games in the league. Tampa hosts Toronto at 7. 7:30 sees the Flyers in New York versus the Rangers. At 8, the Wild have the Sharks in town. Then 2 games at 10, the Oilers host the Blues, and Anaheim hosts the Flames. The Bisons are in action today at home against Durham. It is a single admission doubleheader starting at 4:35. You can listen to that game over on our sister station, The Bet 1520. The Yankees looking to avoid their 4th straight loss. They're taking on Detroit today, and the Yankees do currently lead that game late, 2-0 in the 7th. The Mets, on the other hand, are looking to win their 7th straight, down, though, 2-0 to the Marlins in the 7th. And then later in the evening, the Blue Jays battle the Red Sox in Boston at 6:45. And it is also Masters Week in Augusta, Georgia. The actual tournament will get underway tomorrow morning. Today, though, is the par 3 contest, and we'll get more on the first major of the year when Brian Koziel joins the show at 5:30. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Schopp and the Bulldog.
Uh-oh. Guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody?
Monday, Tuesday, hump day is halfway. It's Mike Schopp.
Mike. What day is it, Mike?
And the Bulldog.
Hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on. I know you can hear me.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
Guess what today is?
It's hump day.
Woo-hoo!
On WGR
Hump Day
Sports Radio 550.
Well, here we go. I am the Bulldog. Thanks for tuning in today. Mike is out. Got Zach Jones alongside. And I, against all better judgment, am prepared to begin today's show talking about the Sabres. Not sure if that's going to, I really have no idea how it's going to go. But I want to see if we can sift through the very easy to understand levels of disinterest, detachment. I'll stop with the D's. Anger, fury, cynicism, irony. It's all there, man. Like the ride for Sabres fans, I've never really experienced a more diverse interaction, honestly, in more than 25 years now of doing this. More than 20. It's almost 30 years of doing this. Sorry, just kind of freaked myself out there. Anyway, right? Yeah, we're almost there. Anyway, the interactions that I have, recognizing that it's social media, and some of it happens on the show too, when we've managed to get a conversation going here that does include your input, your phone calls, and that's certainly what I'm looking for here as we get up and running on this Wednesday, 803-0550. You kind of, I try to anyway, like sort of set that aside. Believe me, I've got plenty of that stored up in reserve here. That is, aggravated maybe is all-encompassing enough. I don't need all the other varieties of some version of the same feeling that we've all got. But it whenever I'm any kind of point I make about the Sabres, this year, I would say, was the first time. And look, this doesn't have to be a true reflection of the audience and the fan base. But I've mentioned this a couple times. I've never wanted to make a big deal out of it because it's sort of I don't know. It would reveal some expectation that you're hanging on what I'm doing and saying in here to a level that I just simply would not be comfortable assuming. All right, but I would tell you that in my experience here, through the drought, all right, through the years of it's now 14 years of this frustration, whenever I would, whether I was by myself to start off a show, whether I was with Mike and it's 5:40 on a Thursday and something just comes up, and whether it's a caller or something Mike says or just something trips a wire and here it comes, Bulldog's about to erupt, right? And I go in hard, and there's yelling and there's definitely spitting, and it's it's a bit of a high wire act for me, honestly, to make sure I don't swear or say anything that would be really, really regrettable and hard to take back. Because I can run so hot about them. I care so much about the hockey team that it is not a plaything when I get upset about them. It is not I'm not here. I'm not a wind-up toy, right? I've never wanted to feel that way. I never have felt that way. I try to keep it real and keep it genuine. This year, there have been a few times where, because it's hard for me too. It's part of why I say the thing about not being a wind-up toy. I can't, hats off to the big national guys that every day that can go on TV and lose their minds and get into arguments about stuff and have people reacting to it. I don't know. If they really feel that way about all the stuff they're talking about, I don't know how you do it. Maybe the paycheck helps you do it. I don't know. But I could never live my professional life that way. I've always tried very hard to keep this, if you ran into me outside of here, I would want to have the same conversation with you. And, maybe sometimes that would include me getting angry and going off, and maybe there would be some spitting. I don't know. Hopefully it wouldn't land on you or in your drink. But all that said, there have been a couple of times this year. I'll just take you through a couple of signposts for me on this season as it relates to Sabres fans and my interactions with them. There have been a couple of different times where I've done that. I've gone in, it wasn't after necessarily the most egregious, disappointing, upsetting moments of the season, the 4-0 collapse that leads to a loss against Colorado, which was really I think Paul said yesterday or the day before with me and Mike that was really the start of it for them, and that was very early in the 13-game winless streak. It wasn't always in the moments. Sometimes people will prod me I can't wait to hear Bulldog tomorrow at 3, and that makes me feel like the wind-up toy. I don't know. I'm not feeling it today. All right. And, maybe that means I'm not good at my job. I don't know. But because, we want to give you what you want and what you expect day to day. Anyway, a couple different times this year, I have gone in hard. And when in past years, without fail, any time that I would do something like that, there would be an enormous reaction on social media, on Twitter. And, it wasn't always people that agreed with me or patted me on the back, but there was a lot of, oh man, spitting fire, truth, and all that kind of thing from the fan base. I'm speaking for you and with you, you're nodding along. This year, for the first time ever, a few times when I've done that, there's been crickets. There's been nothing. And again, look, this isn't scientific. Maybe the algorithm has changed. Maybe the people who used to support that are on blue sky now. I don't know. But it was noticeable enough for me to mention a couple of times in passing that that is a little scary. It could be. I'm only going to say could be because, again, I don't want to overstate my role in all of this with you. But it could be a sign of further detachment, a sign that more of you are even more detached than you have been. And, look, that makes sense. We're into year 14 now. It is fatiguing. So that's one thing to me that's been noticeable. Again, I wouldn't want to build a case study out of it about the fan base and how upset fans are or how detached fans are, because upset is one thing. Usually when I'm upset like that, a lot of you are upset, and we're sort of feeding each other. The scary thing that happens when you get to a point where we have been with the Sabres through most of this season, if not, 3 or 4 seasons, is when you just don't get upset. You don't care enough to get upset. You hear the crazy guy on the radio yelling about them, and you go, I don't know, let me go see if I can find some Taylor Swift to listen to, or whatever. You're hitting a button because you don't have it, right? And it's not for me to analyze that, but I know for me, like in my recreational time, I generally do not choose to participate in things that are only going to aggravate me, or maybe even more pointedly, make me feel bad, right? And if I'm yelling about the Sabres and you're hearing that and you don't feel bad anymore, you might feel bad about that. You might be like, man, what happened to me? And that's depressing. So what do you do with that? I'm out. I don't want to engage in it at all. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to hear it, because, alert me when they are in a playoff spot at a time of the season where it matters, right? This year, the high watermark was 3rd place in the Atlantic Division heading into the Thanksgiving holiday. They swept a California trip and were in 3rd place in the Atlantic Division, and then proceeded to lose 13 games in a row. And it just pretty much torpedoed their season. So now we're into another one of these springtime runs where the Sabres, very close to like what it was 2 seasons ago, where they leaned in hard to the finish. I looked earlier today. They went 9-3 in their final 12 games under Don Granato 2 seasons ago, and that was with Devin Levi. They were alive, when Levi got here. He played 7 games, and they ended up missing, but by a point they were close, and it was okay. We're going to build on that. And look at this high-scoring team. They just figure out how to defend a little bit. We'll be good to go. And we know what happened. Last year started. They never really had it. We've learned since that the captain of the team even said by November we knew we didn't have it. And, of course, no one did anything about it. They just sort of trudged through the season entirely intact, coach intact, the whole thing. And that was that. And then, Don Granato went on his way, and in comes Lindy Ruff. So we've had this sort of, I don't know, maybe they're onto something thing at the end of seasons multiple times. Most recently, as I'm saying, season before last. So that's why I sort of cheekily I say I'm against better judgment, trying to get a conversation on the Sabres going, because I just have no idea what I'm going to get when I do that. And when I'm by myself here, it feels even more like a risk, because I just don't know what I'm going to get. There's the most harmless, the garage tweets. If those of you who follow along, I guess it's been a while since I've ever explained this on the air, but that is, Sabres in the lead late, get the game home, park it in the garage. So I'll tweet that during games. Last few games when I do that, there's, okay, but there's very little interaction, and there's always a few people there. And I know, like, this is the internet, right? So someone's always going to be there to be poking at you, but it's not so much poking at me as it's poking at them or shooting at them. It's like, oh, they're still playing? Oh, why are you even bothering to watch? Don't you like your family? Like, it's, stuff like that. Fine. I get it. It is, to some extent, a professional obligation that I feel to watch them so that I can do this with all of you. If all of you even want me to do this about them, I don't know. You might rather I just sit here and rattle off the heights and weights of defensive tackles in the draft, I think, sometimes, rather than talk about the hockey team. But we're in a very... It's not a unique place anymore because we have been sitting here on the bottom rung for many, many years. Like, it's a very familiar place to be. The Sabres are eliminated. Hey, okay. I don't usually mark the date, but, it happens every year, if not before, around this time. So you've got just a unique, in that it's another year. We're all another year older. We're another year farther away from being able to see this ever getting good. And we're certainly a year farther away from wanting to believe it, right? They're playing great right now. They're 10-3 in their last 13. I referenced 9-3 down the stretch last year. Now they've got games left here this year, but a 10-3 stretch that's the kind of stretch we're calling for in November when they're already quasi-buried. And we're like, well, if they could get a stretch where they win 10 out of 15, that falls out of my mouth because I've said it 1,000 times about them over the years, right? Here's a stretch where they're playing well. Rasmus Dahlin last night, like, I'm so frustrated that we have figured this out now. And, what is the hope? If you'll allow the word hope to be included in a conversation about the Buffalo Sabres, what is the hope? Is that, well, they'll be able to apply whatever it is they've learned here late this year, all these lessons, they will be able to use this as fuel and as a resource for next year, as something of a blueprint. Okay, we know how to play. We know how to manage the puck better and be more responsible. I'm not saying any of that as though it should be in question that they're doing that now. They are doing that now. Like last night, I don't know, did they give up 5 good chances in the game? Like they had an airtight game last night. A little sloppy in the first against the Bruins on Sunday, but the second 2 periods of that game, same thing. Like that is different here, and definitely different even from the team 2 years ago that was absolutely only all about scoring. The Sabres have had a great year scoring goals this year, and that's continuing. But what they've done here lately is mostly, there's exceptions here. They won a game here, I don't know, I forget which one now, where they, to me, decidedly were not the better team, but, they won. Their shots went in, and they got some saves, and they managed to win the game. Maybe that was the Tampa game on Saturday. I can't. It doesn't matter. It hasn't been all like they're dominating the league or anything, but they're playing as well defensively as they have in a long time. Yes, Reimer is giving them stability and goal that Luukkonen this year has not afforded them. Can you allow yourself to even ponder that it means anything? Right? Like, can you? I have a very hard time. I don't want my name on, oh, no, they got it. Just roll it back. Bring everybody back. They play like this. Oh, anything could happen. The problem with that is there is no pressure on them right now. There's no standings pressure. There's no gotta have this game. Gotta put, the 5-game increments of the season here that Lindy started up before the trade deadline got here. It didn't last. They crapped out on that and they just never really got in the race. So you're at a meaningless point of the season from a pressure standpoint. There's nothing there. And that can ease you up and help you play better. You also, yes, their record against playoff teams in this stretch is excellent. I think we know how this goes. Now, some of you youngins out there aren't going to be able to really grasp this because it does include a point about the Sabres actually being a playoff team. But your spot is secured. How do we talk about the Bills? It's a vastly different sport with far fewer games. But, save some stuff, rest guys. If you get the bye, don't get the bye, take an unofficial bye, week 18, get your rest. It's a long hockey season. Any playoff team, sure, Tampa is still in the running for the division championship, and that's a big stake. But am I getting their absolute max effort every night? Especially when they're playing a team that's well out of the playoff mix. Some of these teams, Carolina last night, they're pretty secure in where they are. And I think it's questionable at least to wonder if these teams are matching the effort that the Sabres are putting forth, because they're just trying to go into the summer with a clear conscience, the Sabres at this point, right? And yes, they probably do believe. I bet if I were on the team, I would too. All right, we're doing it in April, and we'll bring it back in October, and we'll be able to do what we were doing in April. I just have a hard time with that. It's not just the time off that gets in the way. This is not a point about momentum or anything. It's just a new season comes, and with that comes new pressure to break a drought that is now at 14 seasons. And I just cannot, until I see them actually do it, tell you I believe that they'll be playing like this when the games count at Halloween next year. Because I no longer have those legs to stand. That does not work for me anymore. And I think many of you are the same. So it's tricky, right? You're still watching these games like I am because you love hockey and you love the Sabres and you want to be informed about them to some extent. I guess I'm talking really to the diehards here, not the people that ask me if I don't like my family because I'm watching hockey games that are meaningless in the standings. It's hard to buy in to a 10-3. We'll see. Again, a few games left to go here, but they've leaned into their best stretch of the season here. They've won 5 games in a row. I don't even have it in me. It took me a while, a couple years ago, to find their last 4-game win streak. I don't know. I don't even think the internet goes back far enough. I'm kidding. I'm just mostly lazy, and I'm in the middle of a show here by myself, and I'm just not going to have time to go find that, and I didn't think to go look for it until just now. It's so tough, all right? We'll just have to live without it for now. I think it was sometime in 23. Anyway, I think I saw a reference to it last night. What do you want to do with it all is really it. I'm saying a lot of words. What do you want to do with it all? I want to remove, for my purposes today, I want to remove the... sell the team. Let the team leave and start over with an expansion team. Any of the, not to say that selling the team is like a radical idea. I just cannot, with a clear mind, tell you that that's a great idea, simply because we are in the most vulnerable position maybe we've ever been in as a hockey market right now. And I say that as someone who was on the radio going through bankruptcies and ownerless phases of this organization's history. That happened, all right? The NHL ran the Sabres for months while they were transitioning from the Adelphia ownership to the Golisano ownership. So it's not a given to me that as the values of these things continue to rise and the business of the Buffalo Sabres has to be at an all-time low. From a revenue-generating standpoint, seats being filled, it just can't be going well. And I would not assume at all that you could find a buyer that wouldn't want to just move this team. And I know you can come with, the NHL would never let that happen. Okay. If there's enough money there, I think they would let anything happen. I know they've been very loyal to Buffalo. Anytime someone makes the point about Pegula selling the team and divesting themselves of hockey and just focusing on the Bills, I just think it's a lot to assume that could just happen and we just continue on as we are here. I mean, the building is half full. I'm not crying for Terry Pegula losing money on his hockey team, but there is no way that is a money-making operation. It's got to be a financial sinkhole right now. So someone comes in, like what makes the team buying world go round is eventually selling them. And Pegula would make a ridiculous profit if he sold the team. The question is someone buying it wanting to, improve revenue. I just don't assume at all that there's someone out there that looks at the current situation here and goes, yeah, I think I can make that work in Buffalo with, 8,000 or 10,000 paying customers a game in a league that is largely defined financially by ticket sales and season ticket sales and in-arena revenue. I mean, I just don't assume that. So I want to sell the team over there. I understand the frustration, and I'm not telling you definitively it can't work, but to me, it's a lot to assume that is the thing that solves this for us. I think it's much more likely that you find your way under this current ownership to a better a better end to one of these seasons, i.e. a playoff spot one of these years. What do you want to do? Are you buying any of this? How are you feeling about it? We'll get into calls right after we take a break. I gobbled up the whole segment laying that out, so my apologies, but we will get right into it and pick them up and put them down as fast as we can. We'll get our quota of NFL draft talk in at 4 o'clock. Chris Trapasso will join me. I've got Paul Hamilton lined up at 5 on, obviously, this. And then Brian Koziel at 5:30, maybe for a little of this, but mostly to preview the Masters, which is beginning. Well, the par 3 thing is going on today. The tournament begins in earnest tomorrow morning, and I've got 10 golfers to pick in our annual majors bet between myself, Brian, and Mike. So we'll do that at 5:30. But lots of time for you in here. So, again, my apologies for not getting to call. I fully intended to do so, get to calls this segment. We'll start right after the break, so hang in there. 803-0550 is the number. I am the Bulldog. Mike is out today. You're listening to WGR.
We know you
Quinn the draws. Quick pass up ahead. Trying to find a way to the net. Scores! Alex Tuck pulls his way to the net. 2-0 Buffalo. What a pass.
It was Byron to Tuck on what looked like a set play off a face-off while shorthanded. I mean, all right, way to go. Alex Tuck is 34th of the year. Last night, the Sabres shut out the Carolina Hurricanes 3-0, improving to 10-3 over their last 13 games. Their home record is excellent over a very recent stretch of play here as well. Glad to have you along for the ride today. I'm the Bulldog. Mike is out today. Got Zach Jones alongside. I said we'd get right to calls, so let's do it. I don't need to reset up anything that's been going on. We're talking about the hockey team. 803-0550 is your number to call. Eddie is first up this segment. Hi, Eddie. Thank you for calling. You're on the air.
Bulldog, thanks for taking the call.
All right. You're welcome.
Fans, if you're a hockey fan, it's kind of easy for you because you just like hockey. So it's hard to, separate from other individuals who might, just be fans of our, one local team. But, it's an interesting conversation. I think it's kind of similar to the belief that, here we are, the Bills, okay? Perennially one of the best teams in the league the past 5 or 6 years. And yet we're at a point now where, okay, regular season doesn't matter. I don't even care. I don't even want to beat the good teams. I don't even want to pay attention to the regular season. I don't care if we win. I guess so. But, there's so many things in life that are so serious and are so important that sports can be a bit of a fantasy. In fact, it kind of is a fantasy. You're not playing the game. And, you get to choose whether you want to be a fan or whether you don't. And I respect fans when they're negative, they don't like the team, or they don't want to watch. It's totally up to you. And I guess my view on this particular situation is okay, let me reverse it. Let's say that we've won 3 and lost 10. I would feel worse. That's just me, though. I don't know what it would portend for the future. I'm not suggesting that it would portend a worse possibility or a better, because I can give you examples of, I guess, either one of them. What do I like? I like seeing a lot of the players that I believe give the effort, do really well. And I see that from our captain. I see that from Thompson. I see that from Tuck. And I love maybe the coaching staff and are they noticing the fact that when you put a guy who works like a dog on a good line, that it actually can work? I love that. Maybe they're going to learn from that. I like the fact that they brought in a veteran, and it turned out well for us that Zucker came in, okay? I like that they made a change to the core. They were willing to do something that they normally don't do. So, yeah, am I looking at glass half full? I guess so, sure. It's my choice to do that, but I really enjoyed seeing Quinn look like his old self. I really enjoyed seeing Benson. When you saw him, he was surrounded by 3 Carolina players, and he didn't stop digging. It looked like he was Marchand in there. He didn't care if somebody was going to take his head off. And guess who got the puck? Thompson. Okay? Same thing later in the game when he went into the corner after that defenseman. He outworked the guy. Yeah, puts the puck right in front where Thompson is. I mean, these are the things I like. Yes, I hope our goaltending can improve and be more steady somehow, but maybe we should go after another veteran player. I think McLeod and Zucker have been totally successful moves, and I think hopefully they'll do more of that because we need another one to go with the young players.
Yeah, thank you, Eddie. Really appreciate it, and I respect the level of enthusiasm represented by your tone. I honestly, I do, and I get the points about it. It's a choice, and look, I'm not. I certainly would not sneer at anyone who's excited about them, like you seem to want to be or actually are. I don't know if you're all the way there or not. You're not talking about them being a playoff team next year for sure or anything based on this, but I get it. And I also respect people who are completely checked out. It can be fatiguing, and you are doing this. This is recreational for just about everyone involved. I think, outside of the people who are being paid to participate, which none of us really. I guess I am kind of tangentially being paid to participate, but I don't have to be talking about them. But I am, and I'm grateful for your input. Jack is next up. Hi, Jack. Thanks for calling. You're on WGR.
Hey, Bulldog. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I got a couple points now that I've listened to you and I listened to the last caller. So if you give me the time, I'd love to go through it real quick. With Eddie, God bless you. You can believe in this team. Maybe you're related to Kevin Adams. My point is, I'm sort of like you, Bulldog. I haven't been a Bills or Sabres fan for a long time, and I'll tell you straight out, it's killed my love for hockey. I got more love of hockey watching Nations 4, Olympics, whatever it is, even Stanley Cup play. With what's going on with Adams, he's had 5 years with his team, and you know what? It looks like he's going to be here for a 6th year. You know what? Maybe we're just content. Maybe we're gullible. And you know what? The Bills or the Sabres will be raising their tickets next year again. My point is, I don't believe in what is going on right now. My thoughts are, they say status quo just because they won the last. I don't give a damn if they win the last 5 games. The point is, this team will probably, if they're going to stay where they are, it's not going to happen. They need a guy that actually has hockey sense, not afraid to make a trade, make excuses about palm trees or whatever. They have somebody that has a little real accountability. But the problem is those guys probably don't want to come to this team and wreck their reputation. This team is a train wreck. And I'm not like you said. I'm not looking for Pagula to sell this team because we like Quebec Nordiques. That team, that city deserves a team. Buffalo will be like them. So I'm not looking for that. But I am saying with Pagula, who never takes an interview, you got another, 2-hour show with Baron and everybody that tells you your Sabre employees talking about how beautiful the Sabres are playing right now. The season starts in October, November. You know, who cares about April when you're already done?
Yeah, that's a lot of it for me too, Jack. Thank you. Appreciate the call and the passion. Yeah, I don't know what is going to happen with Adams here moving forward. I mean, the case is certainly there's a lot of evidence that supports making a change. I just have no idea. Full disclosure, if you remember last year, as bad as the season went, I was not assuming they would fire Don Granato. But they did, and so I don't know. Maybe the same thing happens this year. Maybe Terry Pagula has seen enough, even with the strong finish. But I do think it was notable that Adams was at the helm to trade a piece of the core away at the trade deadline. That doesn't have to mean he stays in the job, but I feel like I'd be surprised if they made a change, and I can't believe I'm saying that. But that's because of where they are. And I don't know what sort of ability. I think Jack makes a very good point about the organization's reputation. The ability for them to lure a top-name candidate, even to come in with Adams still here to supplement what you've got, like a president of hockey operations, a Ken Holland type, right, who's working in the league's front office currently. Rick Dudley's name has been mentioned in this sort of capacity numerous times. You know, these men are all getting older. Dudley, I think, is older than Holland. Holland is 69. I looked today because, I was just kind of curious. I don't know if you can attract that candidate with the current state of things. It almost feels like you've got to get somewhere. You got to get some traction. You got to get the building back to being more than half full night to night. You got to make the playoffs. You got to look like a team that's going somewhere. And the riddle of that is many of you, and I'm inclined to agree, think you need that person to help you get there. But I just don't know what the current situation that you've got a good chance at landing the best person for that job. I think that's how bad it is. I think their reputation is in really, really tough shape. Many of you are going, oh, yeah, thanks, Bulldog. I didn't know that. Ken is next up. Hi, Ken. Thanks for calling. You're on the air here on WGR.
Hey, Bulldog. Thanks for taking my call. How are you doing today?
Good.
Good. So I want to speak to a couple of your points here. The first thing I want to point out is Paul Hamilton, who's really sharp hockey guy, said this 2 years ago. He said this team just simply cannot perform when there's pressure, and I think you're seeing it again, right? Everybody's happy, everybody's excited, Well, yeah, of course. They're playing good right now. There's no expectations. As soon as expectations are applied, this team just can't do anything. So, I've seen this movie before. We've been down this road with this group before. And like I said, Paul Hamilton was very, very astute because he pointed that out when Granato was still the coach. And I think he's absolutely correct. But also, talking about the team and selling the team, listen, Terry Pegula has had 14 seasons to figure this out, right? If he hasn't done it now, he's not going to do it. So if he sells the team and we lose the team or we don't, I mean, do we just go on like this forever in perpetuity?
Well,
it's like
I know it's tough, right? You want change, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you got a GM. Or a GM. You have an owner who hires GMs based on if he gets a warm and fuzzy from them, rather than their bona fides. Are they qualified? Doesn't anybody else find it just bizarre that we've in the tenure of this owner, we've had one general manager with experience. One. The rest of these guys are just people who he took a shot on. And now he's going to keep the guy here that hasn't done anything in 5 years. So everything comes from the top. Terry Pegula has been and always will be the problem. And until he either exits or hires a director of hockey operations or a president or somebody that actually knows how to run an NHL franchise, you're not going to get any change.
Not that you need my help. You're doing a great job. Who's the exception to the experience? Because I don't think he's hired anyone. Murray was not a GM. Murray was an assistant GM, just like Bottrell. He had not been an NHL general manager yet.
Okay. Well, there you go. Then I was right. Thank you for coming.
Yeah. So it's more of the same. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to thank you for something too. Years ago, I don't know what I think maybe it was 9:30, but I used to listen to you every afternoon on my lunch, sitting in my car, eating my sandwich, listening to the Bulldog talking sports. You remember that?
Yeah, that was an evening show. So I don't want to mess with your memory, but maybe you were working night shift and you were eating lunch in your car at 8 o'clock.
I was. As a matter of fact, it's funny that you're saying, but
that works.
Thank you for that. And also, really quick, I just want to point out something too. We have to remember that the current president of the NHL said that the only way the Sabres could be sold the last time is if the party that bought it promised to keep it in Buffalo. So is there a reason why he would have changed his position in the last 14 years? I mean, I don't know. But I think what you're saying is when there's enough money is involved, anything can go out the window.
Yeah, and I just think, Ken, thank you. The franchise valuations is a big part of that. I mean, I just don't know. The Sabres would sell for over $1 billion at this point, I think. Right? Isn't that the estimate, like what their franchise worth is? Given the state of things, I just do not assume at all that there's someone out there, with the resources, or a group of people out there with the resources to make that happen and make it happen with a commitment to Buffalo. I just don't. That doesn't mean it couldn't happen. There might be somebody that's riding around in a limousine right now listening to this. God, I flatter myself to think that's going, oh, yeah? Man, dude, I hope, or ma'am, I hope you're out there. And I hope you have the checkbook and the clout to make it happen. It's a lot for me to assume. So I just don't want to charge into sell the team because I just don't know. They have been... I just can't imagine their financial situation has ever been worse than it is right now. And this is a team that has been bankrupt. So I just don't assume that in the 21st century landscape of big-time sports that someone would like, oh, yeah, let me pay the going rate for an NHL franchise in a market where it seems like half the fan base is detached. It's a lot for me to assume. Thank you for the calls. More of your calls on the way. Chris Trapasso will segue into NFL draft talk at the top of the hour with Chris, his weekly visit here during draft time. But please, lots of time for your calls. More coming up and more after Chris, too. So we'll keep at it here at 803-0550. I'm the Bulldog. Mike's out today. You're listening to WGR.
Got something to say? Say it
Let's get right to it here. Eric is first up. Hi, Eric. Thanks for calling. You're on the air here on WGR.
Hey, Bulldog. Thanks for taking the call. I will get through it under 10,000 words. So my argument with Kevin Adams is very simple. It's 5 years, 5 misses is pro hockey. There's no city or franchise where a general manager would survive this. And it's not that I think he's the worst general manager in the world. It's that they have to show that they're going to act like real teams. That means letting Lindy hire his own coaches. That means rebuilding pro scouting. And that means having a different face running things. And it also means spending to the cap. If they can do those things, and I don't think that's a gigantic lift, I think we'd all be really excited for next year. I'll hang up and listen.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate that. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I think we would be excited by that. I can't believe it's going to happen. It could. It's definitely warranted. I don't know. I feel like what I'm trying to do is put this puzzle together with the pieces that are already on the board. And look, that is that's playing with an arm tied behind your back. I readily admit. Bob is next up. Hi, Bob. Thanks for calling. You're on the air.
Bulldog, thanks for taking my call. I appreciate you big time. Hey, listen, I reached out to Jason Zucker about a month ago on X, and as I'm sitting here in Kentucky blowing the fog away, staring into the abyss of the 14th year, I'm thinking, okay, I've got to pull something good out of this because it can't last like this. Mm-hmm. So I looked all of a sudden, and Zucker popped up into my brain as I was watching him play hockey. He plays a different style. He's never out of position, at least from the games that I saw after I didn't turn him off after him losing halfway through it. And then a couple nights ago, I watched, I guess Krebs now is lined up with him, and I'm seeing Krebs is just turning into a different hockey player, and he's turning into, kind of a mini Zucker. I mean, he's just blowing into the corners. He's grinding. He's doing his thing. So I watched Zucker again last night, and the man's always got his head on a swivel. He's always looking around. He's always in position. And so when I contacted him on X, he contacted me back a few days ago, which just floored me. And he went on to tell me, he says, hey, I appreciate the fact that there are fans still out there, that appreciate us and what we're trying to do here and, hang with us, and especially you guys that are out of town. I went into a few other details, and I got the impression from him that, he understands it, and I think the players on the team understand it. And, he was just appreciative of the fact that a fan would reach out to him and, all right, say, hey, we're still looking at you, man.
All right, Bob. Appreciate that. Appreciate you sharing that anecdote with us. Zucker has been really nice for them. And I know it's not, across the board acclaim. Mike, for example, did not want them to re-sign him. And both he and Greenway both. I think considering their difficulty in attracting players either in free agency or through trades when they've got, some control over that with no trade clauses or even modified, no trade clauses. I think keeping veteran players like that on your team that want to be here, given where they are, you almost have to do it. You shouldn't have to, but where they are, I totally understand it. And I hope it helps. I hope somebody out there this offseason that could help the Sabres looks at them and goes, Zucker wanted to stay, Greenway wanted to, maybe I'll go give that a shot. Because maybe that can help them. Because as much as I didn't like hearing Adams make the point about the palm trees and the taxes, and, it's really more about the state of the franchise and their reputation, the bottom line is, whatever the reason is, they have a very difficult time attracting players. And so you've got two guys that are helping you, and they want to stay. I'm inclined to give them a pass on not turning those into some kind of draft pick or something myself. Thank you for the calls. Really good job this first hour. We definitely will be revisiting this subject as we move through the afternoon, but we got to move on to the NFL draft. Our weekly visit with our buddy Chris Trapasso from CBS Sports is straight ahead here. I am the Bulldog, and this is WGR.
It is officially 14 straight years that the Buffalo Sabres have missed the playoffs following Montreal's win last night. Paul Hamilton has more on the Sabres' win yesterday and also missing the playoffs up at our website, WGR550.com. And do stay tuned. Paul will join the show in just about an hour at 5. For the Sabres, though, they do have 5 more games this season. It'll start with Columbus tomorrow night. This evening, though, 5 games in the league. Tampa hosts Toronto at 7. 7:30 sees the Flyers in New York versus the Rangers. At 8, the Wild have the Sharks in town. Then 2 games at 10 to wrap up the night. Oilers host the Blues, and Anaheim hosts the Flames. The Bisons, they're in action today at home against Durham. It is a single-admission doubleheader. It's going to start at 4:35. You can listen to the games over on our sister station, the Bet 1520. In the majors, we had a number of early games today. The Mets were shut out by the Marlins 5-0. The Yankees took down Detroit 4-3. And then later on in the afternoon, the Blue Jays will battle the Red Sox in Boston at 6:45. And then it is also Masters Week in Augusta, Georgia. The actual tournament is going to get underway tomorrow morning. Today, though, is the par 3 contest. We'll get more on the first major of the season when Brian Koziel joins the show at 5:30. It's Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Schopp.
We were having a very serious conversation about mayonnaise here.
And the Bulldog.
And don't even talk to me about weed.
On WGR Sports Radio 550.
Rolling along here through a Wednesday. Thanks a lot for tuning in and being with me today. Zach Jones alongside. Mike Schopp is out today, joining us now on the West Her Hotline for his weekly visit at this time of the year. Chris Trapasso from CBS Sports, always very generous with his time around draft time, which, I don't know, is this a busier time of year for you, or is it busier when you're writing about all the guys and watching guys during the season, Chris?
Fantastic question. I think for the radio spots and the podcast appearances that I'm very grateful to be a part of, it's certainly busier now because everyone is totally focused on the draft. And I think the people that are asking me to come on understand that I have watched a lot of those players. So from that perspective, like today I was on 3 other CBS shows doing this show, which I love doing every week. But yeah, like from February through early April, it's very busy for me behind the scenes, watching all the film, doing the evaluations, and getting to those final grades for all the players.
Well, a 7-round mock draft earlier this week is quite an undertaking. Will you do another entire 7-round mock before? We're 2 weeks out, 2 weeks and a day out here. Is there another one of those? Or are you just going to do the first couple rounds again?
No, they just only put me through that one time for draft season. So that's nice of them, right? No, I'll have 2 more. I'll have one this upcoming week, or I guess next week, and then the week of the draft, the day before, I'll do my final mock, which is, again, just my trying to get all of those first-round picks correct. But I don't think I'll have any more multi-round mocks, just 2 first-rounders before the draft.
When you're doing that sort of you're undertaking that level of project, I'm just curious, as your friend almost more than professionally, how long does something like that take to put together?
So I started Saturday night, got through the first round pretty quickly because, as you guys know, I do a lot of those, so I could do that relatively quickly. And then actually Sunday I spent a lot of my time like working through day 2 and into day 3, and then finished it Tuesday. So it usually finished it Monday, Tuesday. So it takes usually 3 or 4 days, and you just kind of keep track of the positions that you're sending to all the teams. And this is, again, what helps to be almost 270 guys in that it's not that much of a challenge to slot specific players in. It's usually just hitting team needs and not like tripling up at running back or something like that as you get into the 3rd day of the draft.
Chris Trapasso, CBS Sports NFL draft and player analyst here on the West Her Hotline for his weekly visit. Yeah, I've said a few times this week, and I want to try this out on you, that the way this draft is being talked about as far as like the quality of prospects available from, say, I don't know if it's the midpoint of round one or even a little bit earlier than that, well into Friday here. I don't know how far that plateau is thought to extend, but and maybe you can tell me. But given that it's at least, say, from like 15 to maybe player 50 or 60, that there's, probably not going to be a lot of uniformity in teams' boards out there, because a lot of these prospects are maybe very closely ranked and going to be differently ranked by different teams. Come draft night, as soon as Thursday, round one, I feel like we're probably going to see maybe as many as ever players picked that you're like, man, I've seen him mocked in the second or third round. And conversely, you'll see players on Friday, maybe even into round three. They're like, man, it reminds me of Osiris Torrance 2 years ago, where a lot of Bills fans, we certainly, I'm sure, talked to you about him as an idea for the Bills, whatever number they were picking at that year. They ended up moving up a couple spots and getting Kincaid, or maybe just one spot and getting Kincaid, and then got Osiris Torrance on the way back in round two. I feel like that is almost certainly going to happen this year, where there's going to be guys that you and a lot of other analysts and fans thought were going on Thursday that last until Friday night.
1,000,000%, and this is a perfect segue. Like, that happens every year. That's a perfect segue for something that I wanted to, not get off my chest, but I think was important to say pre-draft, in that I think when you're having me on, you're having 5 or 6, 7 other analysts, there needs to be a wider range of top 32 big boards or first-round prospects. I think we don't really mean to do it. I mean, I make a concerted effort not to fall into the echo chamber, but I think when we get to, like you're mentioning, we get to, say, the first round of 2023, and we think, oh, Osiris Torrance, everyone has him as a first-rounder. He's definitely going there. And then he's the 56th or 58th pick, whatever he was in the draft. Thinking back, we have to realize that we should have different opinions on these players. And if you don't have Omarion Hampton as your number 2 running back, that shouldn't be like, oh my gosh, like, how do you not have that? Everyone else does. Right. We all see things differently. And that's not, any dig on Mike for saying something to me last week about it, but it just sparked my thought of I think it's easy to follow the Mel Kipers and the Daniel Jeremiahs and see, oh man, like he has Matthew Golden this high. Like, I need to have him high too. No, just do your own evaluation. That's what I try to do. Yep. And if I have guys a little higher, a little lower, it kind of gels with what we ultimately see. There'll be guys like you're mentioning in the third round, maybe even into the fourth round, where we saw in the early second in a lot of mock drafts, or in the early second of a lot of people's big boards. So I think I'm welcoming hearing different opinions from other people, and I think with so many people diving in evaluation-wise to the NFL draft, even more than there was 5 or 10 years ago, there should be a wider range, because that's where we're ultimately going to see it happen when the actual draft gets here.
Yeah, I'm sorry if this is turning into like a behind the music with Chris Trapasso about your process, but the way you're talking now, it begs another question that I'm curious about. Like, do you? Because I'll just tell you, for me, when I first started, I mean, I've been at this since '95, so it's been a while. I listened and watched a lot of this sort of content. And there was a point, I don't know when it was, I can't remember, like a line of demarcation or some certain specific, incident or game or set of opinions that turned me this way. I try to take in less of that now, because I feel like I want to have my own opinion. And and if it matches an opinion that, I don't know, Christopher Russo has or something, I want to be ignorant of that. You know what I mean? Like, I want to arrive at that conclusion honestly, or that opinion honestly, rather than be influenced by people that are way above me on the ladder, so to speak. Do you do the same? Do you got to put on blinders to an extent to not be influenced by, the kingpins in your industry?
Yeah, Bulldog, we could not be in any more of agreement with this. That's totally what I try to do, because I've realized that there are those quote-unquote leaders at the top and the people that really can create or tank a draft stock if they don't like a player or they do love a player. So I'm not going to say that I've never looked at a Daniel Jeremiah big board, but with my evaluations that I'm a purist when it comes to them. I want to be able to talk on this show people to read on CBS Sports or on Twitter my genuine evaluations. Feel free to disagree, but it is not anything, as much as it's humanly possible to remove bias. I don't want to be part of the echo chamber whatsoever. So that's why I love Jack Bash as a first-round pick, and I don't love Jahdae Barron from Texas in the first round. And that means not that there will be picked there. It just means that I view them as a lesser prospect. And then you could even look back and realize it's not ultimately where these players are picked. And oftentimes the 7th or 8th wide receiver is the best one, not the 2nd or 3rd. It's not, to me, ultimately where you're selected. Although I think because we are so much in mock draft world these days, that it's almost like the finish line for a lot of people is, oh, how high do they get picked? When in reality, we all know of the 32 first-round picks, probably 16 or more will ultimately be players that don't live up to that hype, and we'll look in the 2nd and the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th round for the Khalil Shakirs and the Christian Benfords and the L'Jarius Sneeds that were all picked later that in a redraft would have easily been first-rounders. So that's more of how I look at it. I try to do that and give my own authentic evaluations for all of these players.
Chris Trapasso, CBS Sports NFL Draft and NFL Player Analyst on the Western Hotline for his weekly visit here during this part of the season. He's not on year round; that would be weird. Once we get to March, Chris is generous enough to give us a weekly look at how he's going about this. All right, well let's try this approach as we get into the Bills, and I hope I save enough time at the end here. I want to get maybe your general thoughts on the class of quarterbacks overall, because that's always, a sexy position to talk about, even though this year the prospects don't seem to be up to the standard we've seen for maybe the last few years. With the Bills at 30 and then the 2 second-round picks, realistically, how should you, I don't know, expect is too strong probably. Well, you tell me. Should we expect the Bills to come out of that with starting, like at 30, should they almost without question get a player that can be plugged into the lineup and start for them, or at least play meaningful minutes? And furthermore, how about those 2 second-round picks? Like, how realistic is it to think they'll come out with 3 starters?
I think it's very realistic. I mean, anytime you have 3 picks in the top 62 like the Bills have, and it is a very deep, if we're really looking at it from like a 100,000-foot view, it's a very good and deep defensive class. There's a lot of corners who are good that feel like mostly second-round picks because of the injuries. We've talked about them. Defensive tackle, whether they go there at 30 or 56 or they trade up or 62, yes, the defensive tackle class has enough top-tier depth in terms of, not your Mason Grahams necessarily, but anyone after that, like you're mentioning. Teams might love Derek Harmon as like a top 15 talent. Other teams might have him as like a late second. And then the edge rusher position is the same, where you have your blue chip guy, you have your Abdul Carter. After that, I wouldn't be surprised if James Pierce from Tennessee, who I love, is like the 11th overall pick to the 49ers, or he's the Bills pick at 56. So I think those, seriously, those 3 positions specifically in this draft, because we don't have, these 4 or 5 or 6 big-time talents at any of those positions in this class, outside of maybe the tackle a little bit, yes, that they can still pick that player, whether it's corner, defensive tackle, or edge, and I'm going to be specific with those 3, and still feel like we're getting a starter if you're the Bills. Like they got Osiris Torrance in round 2, plugged him in, and he's been a 1,000-snap starter ever since.
Yeah. Well, it's awfully convenient that I think, well, you tell me, it feels to me like the 3 most important positions for the Bills are the 3 you mentioned: corner, D-tackle, defensive end. I think I would prioritize them in that order myself too. How about you?
Yeah, I would go corner, D-tackle, defensive end. Yeah. So I mean, if you're off a little bit on that, then I don't think it's totally crazy. And we have to remember that teams don't always just address their biggest need in round 1. That's kind of sort of what the Bills have done, but I don't think they're totally going to always adhere to that philosophy, that if there's a really good edge still available and they're like, all right, we feel better about the depth at D-tackle and the depth at corner that I mentioned, and we're going to go there. So, I would say those 3 are the biggest needs. And like I said, it really feels like, especially in round 2 at corner, and edge, also defensive tackle too. That's where like the bulk of we're going to see players come off the board. Where again, these names, the Trey Amos and the Savon Revel that we're like assuming are just first round picks guaranteed, they may not ultimately be selected in the first round. And then maybe we're talking about a Bills potential trade up from 56. So yes, I think those three positions are the biggest needs, and they will be able to get starters with those first three selections in this draft.
Right, and I suppose the order that they prioritize those is it's hard to predict because you don't know. Exactly. Where the run is going to be. Like if corners start going, then maybe you better get one at 30. But if it's the other way around, if it's defensive tackles, then same thing. So you're going to have to be flexible there. How do you feel about Ravel? He's someone, 6'2", 194. I know there's a September ACL injury that could be a little scary to some teams or even some fans looking at this. How do you feel about this player?
I absolutely love him on film. So all of my evaluations, like this is kind of a branch off of me saying that I try to be as authentic as possible. I just give any evaluations, whether it's written or I'm talking it or whatever, is just based on what I see on the field. So like if the player is healthy, here's what I think. Ravel to me is a top 20 talent in the class. Like you mentioned, tall, long arms. There is some stiffness when he's changing directions because he's like doesn't have that low center of gravity, but finding the football in the air, he's as good as any player in this class. He can play man. He made plays in off coverage where he could just watch and plant and drive on the football. So I think with bringing back Dane Jackson maybe raises the floor a little bit of the cornerback room and would maybe give the Bills less hesitation to pick someone like Revel, who's maybe not going to be ready week one, but by November, December, January, which has really become those money months for this team, would be ready and could kind of get up to speed before the Bills are in the playoffs.
One other DB I want to ask you about, or really a position in general, because as we've talked about already earlier in the conversation, the avoiding the echo chamber and, diversity of opinion. I've referenced John Ledgerd, who I'm sure you're aware of him. We've had him on our shows many times over the years. I've got him on one side talking about this safety class, not really liking any of the guys as first-round prospects. And then on the other side, I've got Greg Cosell talking about both Starks and Emenworry as like day one starters. You can do just about everything you need to do at the position, anything you want to ask them to do. And I think we've talked about Emenworry this way with you already, maybe even as recently as last week. How do you feel about the safety class? I know it's not the biggest need for the Bills, but you know me, I'm crushing on Emenworry and have been since the minute I saw his vitals, and then that only went higher with the combine performance. How do you feel about the safety class overall?
It's pretty top-heavy, but fortunately for the Bills, I think it aligns with if we are going to say that safety is maybe the fourth or fifth biggest need, meaning that they wouldn't need to pick that player until the fourth or the fifth round just to add some depth, kind of take a flyer on a player. That's where it feels like a lot of these safeties are ultimately going to go. If we're talking at the top, I think it is very top-heavy. I would side more with Greg Cosell than John, and that's completely fine. It's good to have, like you're saying, that diversity of opinion. I think Malachi Starks maybe is a little overrated just because he has the Georgia pedigree and he was there for multiple seasons. That I think it's easy to just say, oh, he's a Georgia safety playing for Kirby Smart, who's a disciple of Nick Saban. He's going to be great. I think there are some concerns about his overall athleticism. I mean, we didn't see a crazy workout in Indy or at the Georgia Pro Day, but what he does on the field, he's everywhere. He's rarely missing a tackle. And you and I see eye to eye on Emenworry that I think he is every bit a Jeremy Chin, Kyle Hamilton type, and he can make plays down the field. He's not just a box linebacker safety type. So I think those two in essentially any draft would be first-round safeties. I even like Kevin Winston a lot from Penn State, who's another one coming off an injury. If he was not injured, and I think it was in week 2 against West Virginia he went down, so another one, a September injury like Revel, we would be talking about him because he's big, super athletic, great tackler, and made some plays in coverage as well. So those three, to me, I think in any class would be first-round safeties.
I mentioned I wanted to save some time for quarterbacks, so hopefully we'll have enough time to get through a lot of this. Do you know anything, let's start here, about how the league decides who to invite to the draft? Because over the weekend, I've got this Milroe thing, right? I think we've probably have talked about this. I feel like one team at least is going to fall in love with this guy's skill set. Him being invited to the draft was eye-opening to me because I thought I'd heard this year that the league was trying to be even more selective, more careful about who they invite so as to avoid the specter of a guy sitting there with his family all night long and not getting chosen. So Milroe getting selected to go to the draft and agreeing to go, I don't know, do you think that means they expect him to be chosen on Thursday?
So I don't know exactly how the process works now. I know that the late, great Gil Brandt, who was like a Cowboy scout during the Tom Landry era in the 60s and 70s, who then transitioned over to the media, and he was connected with everybody. He was like the main point man that would talk to GMs and coaches and scouts during the pro day circuit at the combine and then kind of help out the NFL and say, here's who you should invite. I'm assuming there's a team of people probably similar to how the combine invites happen, where like they are working with these directors of college scouting and GMs. But to me, what you're hinting at, I think whoever is ultimately making that decision and pulling the trigger for the NFL has probably heard from enough higher-ups in the NFL, like, yeah, we like Jalen Milroe quite a bit. Like more than, again, the media is expecting him to be a third or a fourth-round pick. I just agree with you, again, that his talent is too tremendous and there's so much untapped potential. We just saw Jalen Hurts win the Super Bowl, and he was not a finished product whatsoever as a passer, but as a great runner and grew in all of his 4 or 5 seasons there in Philadelphia. And now he has a Super Bowl ring. So it wouldn't be shocking to me if Jalen Milroe was a first-round pick because, like I say all the time, the first round is all about traits, and Milroe absolutely has those. Not just as a runner. He's got a strong arm and made a lot of big-time throws down the field, too.
How about the guys that are generally, I don't know if you share this, rated above him? Dart, Sanders, Ward. Do you think if Milroe gets into the first round, we'll get 3 or 4 quarterbacks chosen in the first, or could Milroe maybe, I don't know, take the place of a Sanders or a Dart in round 1?
He could. I mean, there is a scenario that I don't think is like 10% chance that Shedeur Sanders falls. Like maybe it's all a smokescreen. What I've thought was really interesting, and I was on the podcast with former WGR employee Matthew Collar last night, his Purple Insider, and afterward he told me that he thinks it's interesting, and I agree, that we haven't really heard a lot from Deion Sanders. Early in the process, Deion was saying, oh, we're going to pick where we're going to go, and then suddenly that just came to a screeching halt. And in his mind, that was like maybe someone saying to him, dude, you're not helping. Like this guy is, you're not hyping up you 2.0. Like Shedeur is a fine prospect, but he's not Caleb Williams. He's not Joe Burrow. He's not Trevor Lawrence. So I think that's interesting. And I think from hearing at the Combine that his interview process for really every team did not go well, that he kind of felt like and presented himself like he was Caleb Williams or Trevor Lawrence or Joe Burrow when he's not that level of prospect. So there is a world in which Jalen Milroe and Jackson Dart that are plenty athletic. They have strong arms. They had quality careers in the SEC. Now, obviously, Dart was more productive. The offense was a little more gimmicky, but where they could ultimately be the quarterbacks picked in round 1, and Shedeur Sanders isn't picked there at all. Just think back to 2 years ago. You were seeing mocks 2 or 3 days before the draft that Will Levis was going to be a top 5 pick, and then he wasn't picked until the second round. So it's happened.
Yeah. How about Cam Ward? Like, is he worthy of number 1 overall? Like, what level of prospect do you consider him to be, Chris?
In this class, I would say he probably is. My comparison that I've landed on, and it took me a while when you hear this name, it's going way back. He reminds me of David Garrard, where David Garrard, I mean, he's not quite as big as Garrard, and maybe he's a little twitchier. He's just kind of a new age version where the level of athleticism at the quarterback spot across the board has been raised. But you watch David Garrard with the Jaguars, those pesky Jaguars teams, and it was like nothing about him stood out. You weren't like, wow, he has such a strong arm, or like, oh my God, he's such a tremendous athlete, or he's super accurate. But he was like above average across the board, and he, won a playoff game in Pittsburgh, was a solid starter for 4 or 5 seasons there in Jacksonville. That's kind of how I view Cam Ward. He's good improvisationally, but he takes a few too many risks. He's decently athletic, but he's not Kyler Murray. He's not in that upper echelon of athlete. And I like how the accuracy has improved throughout his career. So he, like David Garrard, I think is the consummate overachiever, and he's going to have to be an overachiever there in Tennessee with that kind of new startup, a pretty barren roster. I feel like in this class, that's kind of how I view him. If we're going back to last year, I think he would be the 5th or the 6th quarterback in what was a really good quarterback class.
All right, Chris, that's all the time we've got for today. Thank you for this, and we'll look forward to being, well, another week closer to the draft next Wednesday.
Thanks, Bulldog. Appreciate it.
That is the excellent Chris Trapasso, CBS Sports NFL Draft and NFL player in general, analyst here weekly with us here on WGR. We'll take a time out here. We can get some draft thoughts if you are so inclined. If anything that Chris and I were talking about there tripped a wire for you and you got a thought on the draft, what you want to see happen, feel free to get in at 803-0550. If you want to reset and reload the Sabres conversation from the first hour of the show, what are you inclined to do, if anything, with this strong run to the wire the Sabres are experiencing here on a night where they were officially eliminated for a 14th consecutive season from playoff contention? They won their 10th out of their last 13th game. It's a great stretch, 5th in a row, 5 wins in a row. We talked a lot in the first hour, and I'm happy to reload that too. So really anything you want to do here coming up. 803-0550. Mike is out today. I'm the Bulldog, and this is WGR.
We know you.
8 years of missing the playoffs for the Buffalo Sabres following Montreal's win last night. Paul Hamilton does have more on yesterday's win for the Sabres, but also missing the playoffs again up at our website, WGR550.com. Do stay tuned. Paul will join the show coming up in just under half an hour at 5 p.m. The Sabres do still have 5 more games this season. They'll start with Columbus tomorrow night, and then in the NHL this evening, a very light night, just 5 games. Tampa hosts Toronto at 7. 7:30 sees the Flyers in New York versus the Rangers. At 8, the Wild have the Stars in town, and good news for Minnesota. Both Kirill Kaprizov and Joel Eriksson will be back in the lineup. Then 2 games at 10 to finish out the evening. Oilers host the Blues, and Anaheim, they host the Calgary Flames. The Bisons are in action today at home against Durham. It is a single-admission doubleheader that's going to begin at 4:35. You can listen to the games over on our sister station, the Bet 1520. And it is also Masters Week in Augusta, Georgia. The actual tournament is going to get underway tomorrow morning, but today is the Par 3 contest. We'll get more on the first major of the season when Brian Koziel joins the show at 5:30. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Drunk Chris Curtis. I hope you're not a drunk coach. That's all I want to tell you.
When we started having these calls, I remember we were hitting you like with that steady run of Thanksgiving, right? I think you went to Dallas once for Thanksgiving, and New Orleans for Thanksgiving. Yep. And it was sort of like, hey, everybody, meet the Bills. And what a fun way to do that. And it was almost like, oh, hey, they're a fun opponent. It's flipped the other way. Now they're the draw. And so you don't necessarily need that big other brand to make a Bills game relevant. Every Bills game is relevant. And Josh has definitely ascended into that. You can't really get through a weekend of highlights and news and stats without checking on the Bills quarterback.
That is Mike North, NFL Vice President of Scheduling, I think is his title, something along those lines. It's an annual must-listen with Sal Capaccio and Matt Beauvais, part of their It's Always Game Day in Buffalo podcast series that Matt and Sal have been doing now for quite a few years. And that is an annual visit from Mike North, and Sal is always so thrilled about it, as are we. Mike more so than me, but I enjoy it too. Certainly thinking about how that's going to all shake out and come together here. It's, after the draft. We're into May before we get to the schedule, and it has its own it's kind of carved out its own, like many things in football have. It's kind of carved out. I don't think I want to go to like it's carved out its own week, but I don't know, man. Like I'm not sure how different this show is than a lot of other shows around the country that are thematically similar. We talk an inordinate amount about the schedule in advance of it coming out than the average NFL-centric talk show. I can't be sure. I don't, like I said to Chris Tabrazzo, I don't spend a lot of time taking in this kind of content for real work related purposes. I don't want to have other people's opinions about things that I need to have opinions about rattling around in my head. It's unavoidable in some cases, obviously. But anyway, the schedule, I'm bracing. Bracing isn't really the right way to put it. I mean, Sunday 1:00 is just forget it. There'll be some of that. But man, I just think the Bills are so hot right now. I don't think there's fatigue from them not getting all the way there. There is within our fan base, I think, within the Bills fan base, there's plenty of like, oh, come on already, right? Had a guy in the first hour, we were talking about the Sabres, but he brought up the Bills and how, the regular season doesn't even matter. And I don't know. I would never want to put my name all the way on that. I mean, I know it's largely, almost entirely going to be about, judging what they do in January and in the playoffs. But to say you don't care about what happens in the regular season, I mean, I'm always invested in the 1 seed, and week to week, I still want to see them beat the good teams and, put up the best record we can hope for. So in that way, it's not just about January, but certainly the conclusion, where it concludes, how it concludes, outweighs all the rest of it disproportionately by a lot. And that's how it is when you're good. You're a contending level team. That's the expectation. But I would not just want to brush off the regular season entirely. But man, I think the way Mike North sounds there. Sal's mentioned it. I don't know I wouldn't think about Thanksgiving, but Black Friday to me could be on the table. Could they get both a Black Friday and a Christmas Day game? I feel like that could happen. Didn't the Chiefs get that last year? They were in Pittsburgh on Christmas, and were they not Black Friday with the Raiders? I feel like I was out watching them on Black Friday this past year. I think that's right. So I don't know, maybe that's out there in the offing for the Bills. I feel like Thanksgiving, like Mike North said, they've kind of hit for the cycle on the Thanksgiving Day games, right? They were in Dallas that first year in 2019 when they made the playoffs and lost to Houston, and that was kind of like a Josh Allen coming out party. The quarterback sneak there was just so awesome. Then the following year it was New Orleans, and then was it 3 years in a row? I can't remember. Anyway, they've done it all. And that doesn't mean they can't end up in one of those spots, but they don't play either the Lions or the Cowboys, so they would have to be the night game. And they did that in New Orleans a few years ago. That's where Tre'Davious White got hurt. Following year, Von Miller got hurt in Detroit. You might be swearing off Thanksgiving. Anyway, Black Friday, Christmas Day, I could see it. And with all these opponents, I think Sal or Matt, because Sal mentioned this to us, I think yesterday, that one of the two of them asked Mike North about the marquee opponents coming in here, right? Kansas City, Philadelphia, you just got Cincinnati, Baltimore. You got heavy hitters on the non-division schedule rolling in here. And they asked Mike North, like, how many, if any, of those games do you think will be at 1 o'clock on Sunday? Now, that does not mean a night game or a standalone game. We saw the Bills play plenty of 425s. That's a big national doubleheader window. CBS has loved that for the Bills and Chiefs. And so I would expect another healthy dose of that with those opponents on the schedule, and then probably some night games. I mean, any one of those 4 games could go anywhere on a night schedule, and you'd say, like, oh, of course, I get it, right? The Bengals might be the shakiest of the bunch because they weren't good last year, but they're still star-laden on offense, and if they have some semblance of a defense this year, you'd expect them to rebound, I think, maybe even pretty healthily. Schedule-wise, I think, newsflash, if you live for the 1 o'clock Sunday, like, I think a lot of fans who tailgate like the routine of that. I like the routine of that, even though I'm not Joe Tailgater. Just from a work standpoint, I like it. It just feels the most familiar to me. Gee, why do you think that is? Could it be a 17-year stretch where the Bills barely ever registered and warranted playing at night? I mean, we got a lot of experience with 1 o'clock Sunday. But I still like it. It's my favorite time slot for them. But few and far between as we continue on this track we're on with the Bills, where they're just this super high-level contending team. This is not me complaining about that. I gladly will work, whatever it is, Thursday night games and Monday night games and the whole thing, considering how much fun it's all been with them. 803-0550 is the number if you want to get in on the conversation. We just spent a good 25 minutes or so with Chris Trapasso, our buddy from CBS Sports, talking about the draft coming up. We're 2 weeks from tomorrow for round 1, and we ended our conversation talking about the quarterbacks there. And if this has not come through over the course of time, let me just say it as plainly as I could. If the Bills needed a quarterback this draft, I would not want to pick anyone other than Jalen Milroe. Like, that would be my selection. And any of these guys might end up being good. I mean, who knows? But I am not super high on Sanders at all. I think Ward is okay. I think, Chris's comparison, David Garrard, fine, good, good player. Not a great player, not a transcendent player, not a franchise-defining, franchise-changing franchise quarterback. But, good. You're probably okay for a while, but eventually you're going to I need to get better. That's maybe where I would look at Cam Ward's ceiling being sitting here today. I feel like Milroe is the only candidate, the only player in this class that has the potential to really smash. It's going to take time. You're going to have patience. But I do not think any comparisons. There are comparisons, and I've made them myself as cautionary tales with a toolsy guy like Anthony Richardson, who barely played any college football, but big, great, elite running talent, big arm, big talent. Let's bank on it. And he went 5th. And that has not gone well so far in Indianapolis, so much so that they're bringing in Daniel Jones to compete for the job with him this offseason. I mean, thoughts and prayers, Colts fans. I feel like Milroe, again, you're throwing darts and you could get burned. I feel like he's the only guy that has any sort of elite traits athletically in this whole group. And as much as I think you can get trapped and seduced by the traits and think, I'm going to get the next Josh Allen, it's still what I would shoot for. I just think I'm treading water with any of these other guys. He, to me, is someone who, in a year's time, or maybe even 2, who knows, depending on where he lands, you're going to have to be patient. The fans are going to have to be patient. Your owner is going to have to be patient. And, of course, the coaching staff and the GM that drafts him going to have to be patient. I feel like that is the only guy that has superstar written all over him. Well, the potential. He's not walking around in a cape right now. But he has the skill set to get there. And I really don't think any of these guys, could they be good starters in the league? Sure. But can they be franchise lifters? Man, I think Milroe's the only guy that has the talent to make that happen. 803-0550 is the number. We're already up against the clock because we went along with Chris. That's how it goes sometimes. Room for your calls after this, and then Paul Hamilton at the top of the hour. 803-0550 is the number. Mike is out today along with Zach Jones. I'm the Bulldog, and you're listening to WGR.
They would, according to this, like to be referred to as Bulldog's bullpen. Which is the people in the chat.
What is? Oh, I see.
In YouTube, it was the.
I'm not sure we're sanctioning that name yet. But
okay. That was an official workshop.
I guess
I did just workshop.
I mean, it's their thing. I guess they can really do whatever they want.
Right. You don't necessarily get to sign off.
I don't get to say. Yeah, that's probably right.
But
I will step aside. I didn't mean for my ego to get in the way. Go ahead, please. With me in about 45 minutes or so to preview the first major of the season, the Masters. The par 3's been going on today. I don't know what I've got ESPN on, and there's still coverage of that, but I think it's just like Sports Center at the Masters or something. Anyway, whatever. There's lots of golf coverage, and that will be the case starting tomorrow morning, of course, with round one of the first major of the season. Brian and I and Mike have four times a year, the four majors. Our majors bet, one of us has to pick 10 players, the other two get the field, and it is my turn to pick. So I'm ready. I've done all my research, and Brian will join me at 5:30 to help us get that set up as well. And then hopefully, time-wise willing on Brian's end, he'll be able to join us on Thursday and Friday at the conclusion. Not the conclusion. The rounds will still be going on, but just to sort of wrap up days 1 and 2, of the Masters. Brad is up first this segment. Hi, Brad. Thanks for calling. You're on the air here on WGR.
Hi, Bulldog. How you doing today?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm hanging in there. Hey, I just wanted to make a comment about James Cook. I was kind of on the fence about paying him, and then I really started kind of like realizing his ascension, and I just started thinking like, he's a special player. I think maybe we should just pay him. You know, all these other special players we're paying. I just feel like maybe we should pay him, you know?
Well, I hear you. There's a case to be made to pay him. Special is an interesting way to describe him. I'm not sure how special he is, and that's part of my reluctance to give him a top-of-the-market contract. He certainly has played well enough to deserve an extension. I get that. But I don't think he is at the Saquon Barkley level, the Christian McCaffrey level, to be like at the top or near the top of the market. I can appreciate, just like anyone can, that the marketplace shifts. I mean, a lot of how dug in the running backs don't matter, don't give running backs second contract group has been is because that's what the market is telling you, right? If other teams aren't paying running backs big money second contracts, don't go there. You're going to be able to find value elsewhere if you don't do that. And I still very much want to live there, despite how last offseason went. You know, I think it's fair to point out that Najee Harris, a former first-round pick who was productive in Pittsburgh, didn't even get his fifth-year option picked up, and in free agency found a one-year deal for $5 million. This offseason has not followed suit. In other words, like a new trend was not born. Of course, that has to do with the level of player that Harris is versus the guys who cashed in last year. Jacobs, Barkley, all got big contracts. Derrick Henry, like those are almost generational. Well, at least Barkley and Henry are. I mean, they're superstars. Jacobs is not on that level, but he still got pretty handsomely paid, more so than I would have told you I expected him to get. This year did not follow suit. You know, the caliber of player available plays into that, of course. But a guy that's not even on the field for me half the time does not warrant being paid like Saquon Barkley to me. Just plain and simple. So is he valuable? Yes. Is he important to this Bills offense? Yes. I'm ready to call a bluff and tell him to come in here and play on his fourth year of his rookie contract. And, you know, if he gives me another year like last year, then there's maybe more of a conversation to be had. But I respect where the Bills seem to be for now, not knowing the inner workings. But I'm not eager to get in bed with that level of contract for almost any running back, let alone a guy that's playing less than 50% of the snaps for me. I like very much how the Bills' running back room worked last year, and I would like it to continue working that way, but I don't want to pay 3 times what I'm paying for it, plainly. So thank you for the call. We'll hit a timeout here. Paul Hamilton will get back into the Sabres, who won a 5th in a row and 10th out of their last 13, and also were eliminated for a 14th consecutive year from playoff contention. A bit of a mixed bag with the Sabres, but we'll get into it with Paul after this as we continue. Mike is off today. I'm the Bulldog, and this is WGR.
Call
The Buffalo Sabres will be missing the playoffs following Montreal's win last night. Paul Hamilton has more on yesterday's win for the Sabres, but ultimately still missing the playoffs again up at our website, WGR550.com. And do stay tuned as Paul is going to join the show next. The Sabres season, though, is not over. They do have 5 more games this season. It'll start tomorrow with Columbus. But tonight, relatively light night in the NHL. 5 games. Tampa hosts Toronto at 7. 7:30 sees the Flyers in New York versus the Rangers. At 8, the Wild have the Sharks in town. Good news, though, for Minnesota. Both Kirill Kaprizov and Joel Eriksson will be back in the lineup. And then 2 games at 10. The Oilers host the Blues, and Anaheim, they host the Calgary Flames. More pre-draft visit reports are coming out for the Bills, and today Ryan Talbot is reporting Utah State wide receiver Jalen Royals will visit the team next week. The Bisons, they're in action today at home against Durham. It is a single-admission doubleheader that got going about a half hour ago. You can listen to those games over at our sister station, the Bet 1520. And it is also Masters Week in Augusta, Georgia. The actual tournament will get underway tomorrow morning. Today is the Par 3 contest, and we'll get our first look at the first major when Brian Koziel joins the show at 5:30. That's Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
It's Paul Hamilton.
That's what they called me in college. It's the bone.
He has the facts to back up his opinions.
People ask me, well, how are the Sabres going to, are they going to win tonight? I don't have a clue.
On WGR Sports Radio 550.
I hate, after all this time, to be the one to blow Paul's cover, but he knows what's going to happen in all these games. Paul is Illuminati. He's a part of the global hockey cabal. He knows the results. He's in on the script writing. And 14 years, that was your idea, Paul, for them to miss the playoffs. I'm sorry, I'll stop. Hi, Paul. How are you?
Like the Colorado game before it started. I said, well, the Sabres are going to go out to a 4-0 lead,
right,
and then they're going to lose the game. I mean,
right.
That was right in the pregame show,
and then their season is going to spiral hopelessly from there. Right, yeah. Woo! So 14 straight years, Paul. I mean, a caller referenced a conversation we've had numerous times over the years here, but especially, and I think his time frame was important too, because it was 2 years ago when they were finishing strong under Don Granato. Fine. Look at this team go when there's no pressure. Can they do it when the standings are relevant and actually have it be meaningful? And I don't know. I guess we all still remain, some of us remain unconvinced of that. I'm certainly in that camp. I mean, I don't know what to do with this. I can appreciate that they're playing very well, especially defensively here lately. They've really tightened things up, mostly here. But what does it really, what does it amount to? What does it all mean?
Well, when one of the most respected leaders in the NHL stood there on quite a few locker cleanout days and said, Kyle Oposo, and said seasons do not connect from one to the other. A lot of it is the guys that you see end this season will not be in the lineup when the season starts the next year. Now, I'm not saying it can't. I'm not saying it never does. If people, and I've been impressed with what I've seen lately.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that I've seen is, you know how you say, well, first of all, you got to have fun. And I've noticed now that they play the way they're supposed to, they're realizing that the game of hockey can be fun if you go out and play it the right way and go out and, and that will lead to offensive chances. That will lead to defending. That will lead to your fans be screaming. I mean, we've had some pretty good crowds lately who've really enjoyed the games and been loud when the Sabres have, when they won that shootout game. It was really loud in there. I mean, people enjoyed it. And the goals they scored last night in a 3-0 game, the fans were into it. And all that, you can see on their faces that they're enjoying playing hockey with each other. They're more connected with each other now. If they can remember what that's like in October and what the feeling was like before that, basically his team has been together for 3 years as a core, and remember what most of those 3 years were like and how miserable it was, and how much fun it was to play hockey when all you have to do is play the game the way your coach wants you to play. Who knows? Maybe it can. I mean, they don't know if it's going to carry over in October. We don't know if it's going to carry over in October. But I can tell you a very respected leader in that room for many years and the former captain said, seasons don't carry over to the next. He goes, you got to start in training camp in day one and start all over again and start earning it.
Yeah, I'm torn, Paul, because I don't want to settle for just because it hasn't happened yet, that these guys have not figured out how to do it. And I know there's a lot of fatigue here with the core group, and we've seen them not be able to handle the pressure of the moment. And all we're talking about is regular season games in like November and December when the standings were still relevant and you were alive, and they just haven't been able to come through. But they are still, you mentioned the core. Now, one big piece was moved in Dylan Cousins and replaced by Josh Norris, who we have barely seen play here. But, hopefully at some point, if not this year, next year, he's a part of this. Another year older, I don't want to just blow that off considering how young a lot of these guys are. Like, I know Tuck and Thompson are established veteran players in the league. And, of course, guys like Zucker and Greenway are. But a lot of the key pieces on this team, I mean, your top line now, you said it yesterday in pregame and with us in interviews in pregame. You got a 19 and a 20-year-old playing on your top line. I'm not sure how many teams in the league would barrel into a new season with that as your top line. But they're producing, right? So, but the bigger question is, can guys learn how to deal with that pressure that they have folded under in the past? Because there is still a lot of young hockey players on this team that, despite having failed going through it already a couple of different times, still could find their way, I think, to figure out how to deal with the standings mattering and the games in November and December having importance and being able to rise to that moment.
Yeah, they're beating good teams along the way, and some of these teams need these games. And the Sabres are going out, and they're the better team that night, and they win. Ottawa, at the time, it seemed like they needed those games against Buffalo. They didn't win a game against the Sabres, 0-4. That could have ruined them. Now they've clinched a playoff spot, so it didn't hurt them. But at the time, they didn't know that. And Buffalo was the better team in all 4 games. They deserved to win all 4. They weren't lucky. They deserved to win all 4 of those. They beat the Edmonton Oilers. They beat Vegas. They went into Washington, scored 8 goals on them. As I recall, I don't think Washington had given up more than 5 all year. Against one of the best teams and a team that really picked up momentum in the third period and looked like they were going to come charging back. When Ovechkin scored and the crowd thought he scored again and it was 6-5, it looked pretty dim. But the Sabres, I think it was within a minute or so, came right back and scored a goal to make it 7-5. That's not what we saw earlier in the year. We would see mass panic, and they would. So they're. From what I've seen, and I'll just keep saying it, from the time Thompson got decked, from that point on, I don't see a team that panics when the pressure's on, as far as winning a hockey game, I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. I know the pressure hasn't been on it trying to be in the playoffs. When they take the lead with one minute into the third period for a 1-goal lead, and it's 3-2, and they finish with a 3-2 win, they weren't doing that earlier in the year. They'd take that 1-goal lead and they would lose 5-3 because they would just sit back and go, okay, we can't lose the lead. We can't make a mistake. Oh, we're afraid to make a mistake, and then they make a mistake. And all that seems to have improved, but. You make a very good point. The pressure of playoffs, the pressure of, that type of hockey isn't what they're experiencing right now. But they've been pretty staunch in not doing what their coaches tell them to do for 3 years now, 2.5, I will say. Right. And, they did it for Granato. They did it for Ruff. Ruff was still extremely frustrated. He brought it up again yesterday. You heard him on the pregame that all I'm focused on is trying to teach this team how to play the right way all the time. That's all we're trying to do right now. And he goes, we're not developing hockey players, which means Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is going to watch James Reimer play hockey. And, we're trying to build a program that their muscle memory would go back to how to play the game the right way. For 2.5 years, their muscle memory went to panic. Yeah, everything was and then they're coming at us. Oh no, and that's the way they played. Well, now they're trying to get into their muscle memory to revert back to playing the right way. All right, you had a bad period against Boston. You're down 2-0. Go play the right way for 40 minutes and beat them 6-1 for the rest of the game. That type of an attitude. That's what he's trying to instill in these guys right now, because he's extremely upset that he has not fixed this, that this all happened too late, and he takes responsibility for that. And he said something interesting last night in the postgame. I don't know if you were listening to him. He goes, now it's interesting. He said, I hardly have to say anything now. He goes, the players are doing it for me. He said guys like Dahlin and Thompson, and he goes, even some of the young guys, they come off the ice and they've got something to say, whether it's good or bad, about the way they're playing. And he goes, I don't have to say too much anymore. And he goes, that means more than, he said, peer pressure like that means a lot more to players than a coach standing there saying it or yelling at them or the rest of that. And he said that's what they've developed into now, where they are taking ownership of their game themselves, where the coaches don't have to step in. And I found that interesting. I've never heard Ruff say that before.
Yeah. Paul, I can remember him saying that many years ago. I'm talking about the teams in like 98, 99. Like where you want to be is the players sort of own the room. They run the room, and that takes care of itself. And like you've got tactical stuff to deal with and meetings about special teams, but really from a holding one another accountable standpoint, if the best place you can be as a coach is to not have to really even deal with it, because the players are just going to take care of it. We'll see if they can graduate to that point. Paul Hamilton on the West Her Hotline with me here on WGR. How interesting do you find it that Luukkonen is on the outside right now looking in? Because I wouldn't, Paul, say he needs to be developed. It's more of a, which was the phrasing you used, or that Ruff is using in general. Like, we're not developing players. We're trying to learn how to win games and play the right way. And I respect and appreciate that. Luukkonen maybe needs to get right more than get developed at this point, because, I mean, he's played how many hundreds of games already now in the NHL, or over 100 anyway. What do you think the way back is for him? Like, is this bad enough that they could consider moving him and replacing him with a different veteran goalie to pair with, I don't know who, Levi or someone else? Like, what do you think the plan will be in goal this offseason with the fact that Luukkonen...
They'll bring back Reimer.
What's that?
If they move him, they'll bring back Reimer, and Reimer and Levi would probably be the pair then. That's the thing. I don't know what they're going to do in goal. I don't know what I would do in goal right now if I were Adams. Because I thought, and as did he, they had their number one goalie last year. He played like a number one goalie. His numbers in the last 35 games were right up at the top of the league. He was making big saves at big times, and it looked like they had their guy. And then, for whatever reason, Ruff alternated goalies to start the year. Well, that was a disaster. That didn't work. Because last year, Luukkonen, the more he played, the better he got. But the alternating goalies didn't help either one of them. So they finally sent Levi down to Rochester, and Luukkonen got the job. He's played 53 games, had some good games. He hasn't been all bad, but certainly has not had the season or has a claim, I think, to the number one goaltending position right now. And I think the idea you had the other day, and I've brought it up on other shows, might be the idea, where you got the two young guys. Reimer does genuinely love it here. He genuinely likes playing on this team. He likes these players. He might be agreeable to coming back. If they tell him, like, look, we have these two young guys. If they both claim the jobs in training camp, we will do you a solid. We will find you a home. We'll waive you, or we'll let you out of your contract, or we will trade you somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
We will help you out if you want to re-sign here and see how this works out. Whether he would be agreeable to that, I have no idea. But he is going to be 38 years old when the season starts. So I don't know if that you want him being your number one goaltender.
My God, no. As excellent
as well as he's playing.
Yeah. Wouldn't he, with a straight face, tell you that too? I think even he's not ready to play 60 games or 55. I mean, that seems nuts to me at that age. I mean, whatever. I don't mean to put words in his mouth. I don't know the man. No, that would be a disaster to me, or it could be anyway. I wouldn't have high expectations for that. Yeah, my idea, just to fill it out, was to basically run it back. Because I think the biggest claim Luukkonen has to the number one job, Paul, is his contract. They did just make that commitment, and I would want to try to make that work again. And a rocky season in year one of that contract should not be flushable. Like, if they can find a way to upgrade, or at least what looks like an upgrade that involves moving him, like, I'm all ears. I'm not sure how likely that should be. And I think at his age still, I would expect him to bounce back, I guess, is all I would say. Like, I don't think
you're doing great. With that contract, if that's your number one goaltender and he has that contract, you're doing great. That's a great contract.
Yeah.
That's a great team contract for a number one goaltender. If he can refine what is wrong with him in the off season. Now, he does have a different goalie coach when he goes home for the summer. So I'm sure he checks in with Mike Bales too. I mean, but he does have somebody else that works with him in the summertime. Can that goaltender coach play whatever this is out of him? And I'm sure his confidence is shot too. I mean, he has eyes. He can see Lindy Ruff doesn't have any confidence in him right now, so that does not help him. And the Philadelphia game was a complete disaster because the Sabres turned the puck over from the word go. So now he's got all these outnumbers coming at him immediately, and he hadn't been net a while, and 7 wind up on the board on him. And then the Boston game starts the same way. And not only are they turning the puck over, they're giving it to Pasternak. So now he's got Pasternak ripping at him on outnumbered right away. And that didn't go well either. But then he settled into the game because his team settled into the game. He only faced 20 shots. He did make some good saves in the last 2 periods along the way. He didn't have to make a lot of them. But it was good for him that he could make some good saves but didn't have to make a lot of them. It allowed him to settle in and see, okay, yeah, I can make a big save here or something, and maybe get a little confidence in himself, and now he sits again. It would probably be better off if you put him in against Columbus tomorrow and just let him build on that the experience of the Boston game, where it was a better game than he's had in a while once they got him out of the first period, when, again, he's facing Pasternak and outnumbered as soon as the game starts. Yeah,
or last night against Carolina. It could have been a great spot to find, and they did have a day off in between. It's not like it would have been impossible to conceive of that. Have you talked to him about where you mentioned, like, his confidence must be struggling. I get that, the way he's being used. Reimer's played 8 of the last 11 here as we're going. So, he can see what's going on. I wonder how much if at all, he's talked about how this has gone for him and maybe some of the reasons why. That might be like a locker room clean-out conversation more than a in-the-season conversation, I suppose.
In chatting with him, he said, look, at that break, he used that to try to clear his mind and to, kind of flush things and then really work on his game. Figure out what's the problem, work on it. And so he said, maybe the time that he didn't wind up in the net helped him to be able to do those things where when you have a busy schedule like that, you just don't have the time to do that. So, and then the Philadelphia game hits, and that turns into a disaster because the team didn't play well in front of him, and nor did he. So the Boston game, I think, is something he can build on, but he may only see the net one more time this weekend. in Florida or Tampa. And that may be it for him. So, Ruff has a different agenda right now. And it includes the goaltender that gives this team the best chance to win. That's his agenda, whoever that might be. And right now it's not number one.
So goaltending needs to be fixed. Special teams, Paul. I mean, this team being so high up in the rankings in 5-on-5 scoring it sort of harkens back to 2 years ago when this team just could, score like crazy at will, but defensively they were a mess. Like their goals against as a team, obviously not good, and their special teams has really killed them. I mean, any one of those things is like, if their special teams are even in the middle, maybe, of the pack instead of in the 20s, right? Both, I think, are in the 20s. Maybe we're talking about a whole different season here.
Yeah, the goal scoring is there. I mean, they have been climbing the ladder for a while now in goal scoring. They are 7th in the league in goal scoring with 3.27 goals per game. But you mentioned the goals against. Well, when your goals against is just horrid, and you are down at number 29, and your special teams are down there also. Your power play is down at number 26. And their penalty killing has been off and on. There have been times this year their penalty killing has been excellent. There are times there has not been. They're 23rd in penalty killing. So, yeah, those are the things that they have to improve on. But, one of the reasons they've gone on this run where they've won 10 of 13 and won 16 out of 20 at home is because they're scoring goals and, they're defending much better. Even though the goals against is still not great, they're not giving up those chances. I mean, the turnovers just have not been there as much as they have. I haven't heard a peep about Owen Power in about 2 weeks. And people just rip him to shreds. Shreds. They despise him in playing for the Buffalo Sabres. I have not had anybody comment on Owen Power for a bit now, and I think he's been part of the improvement. I think his game has improved, as has a lot of others, and that's helped them defend better, with the improvement from him and others. So, but, yeah, when you look at what's happened in this season, well, when your special teams are not good on either side and your goals against is not good and you're not getting big saves and you can't hold leads, I mean, that's their goal scoring would get them leads, and then they couldn't hold them, and you win a couple of games and then you lose 4, and then you win 3 and you lose 7, and then you win 2 and you lose 13. That
Thanks for mixing the 13 back in there.
Yeah, that doesn't, and that's not happening right now. And that's that they have now have their first 5-game winning streak since January 2023, and they're working on that, trying to get a 6th tomorrow in Columbus. So, the thing is, they are doing things right, whether the pressure's on, whether it's not, whether we'll see it in October, whether we don't. They are doing things right. How that shakes down as far as the future of the Buffalo Sabres, as I said, in October we're going to find out.
Paul, I appreciate the 13-game losing streak coming up, as it always does, and rightly so. It's the headliner. But there was, between February 27th and March 8th, I have a 6-game losing streak mixed in there, too. So,
I said that one, too.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just saying, like, that jumped out at me a little bit ago. You mentioned a timeline somewhere, like since maybe the New Jersey game, I think is what you were talking about.
Yep.
And that 6-game losing streak is post that, but still, the point holds. Like, you're seeing a overall, improvement since then. So,
well, that's when it started. It didn't start like right then and there where they just play great hockey. They play good hockey and then still had games that were stinkers, obviously. Now the stinkers are more few and farther between.
Yep.
They're not coming up as often. I mean, they've had 2 stinkers lately, Detroit and Philadelphia. Other than that, I would say they've played the way they're supposed to, win or lose, in most games other than that recently.
All right, Paul, we got to go. Thank you very much for this, and I'll talk to you hopefully with Mike tomorrow at 6 for pregame before the Columbus game.
Sounds good.
That's our dude Paul Hamilton on the West Her Hotline. His appearances are brought to you by Equitable Advisors. Planning for your future is about more than just money. Let Equitable be your guide. And by Relax Honda Relax, we got this. We'll hit a break, and our buddy Brian Koziel will be in, maybe a little on the Sabres, but mostly he's here to preview the Masters and our Pick 10 bet. I'm up to pick 10 golfers. Mike and Brian will have the field. So we'll do all of that as we continue here on WGR.
We know
It is Masters Week in Augusta, Georgia. The actual tournament is going to start tomorrow morning, but today is the par 3 contest. We'll get more on the first major of the season as Brian Koziel will join the show next, so do stay tuned for that. For the Sabres, they are officially at 14 straight years without playoffs following Montreal's win last night. Paul Hamilton has more on the Sabres' win yesterday, but ultimately missing the playoffs again up at our website, WGR550.com. And then more pre-draft visits for the Bills as today Ryan Talbot is reporting Utah State wide receiver Jalen Royals will be visiting the team next week. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Really? This voice is supposed to talk over this? You
can make it work.
What are we doing here? Brian Koziel on the West Air Hotline. It's Masters Week, which means the Pick 10 bet is back. That means Brian Koziel is back on our show. Brian, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm great. You didn't want to give me your best Vern Lundquist? Yes, sir.
I don't.
Maybe. Yes, sir. Come on, you can do that.
No, I don't know. I'm too shy, Brian, is what it is. I've been meaning to ask you. I was hoping to talk to you before we got to this, and time's going to be a little tight here because I don't know how clocks work, apparently. But how do you think? I read a long piece today. I think it was at The Ringer. About LIV and the PGA Tour and the Saudis and the president and there's all kinds of factors trying to get golf all back under one big tent. How do you think all of that is going at this point?
Slow and taking forever, and I think you're getting frustration from fans probably to the point where they're just like, all right, just tell us when it's happening now. Over the last calendar year, we've heard that they've come to an agreement or they're going to work together or they're going to be, PIF is going to be investing in the PGA Tour. But we continue to not get any announcement about it. So I get why maybe people are annoyed or maybe people have just turned the page and said, look, it's, whenever it happens and whatever. Brooks Koepka has said that he feels like that he there's been reports that he has actually reached out to Jay Monahan, the commissioner of the PGA Tour, to ask about playing in PGA Tour events. There's been reports that DeChambeau's contract with LIV may be up soon and that he would be up for returning. So I think some of the players who were kind of still in their prime and still younger, and I think I'd put Koepka and DeChambeau on that list, maybe we're hoping that LIV was farther along in terms of where they thought it would be. And I don't know what they really thought it was going to be. I mean, I think we all knew it was going to be a big check from a place that people maybe questioned where the money was coming from. But I don't necessarily think that I thought that 2 years or 3 years from now that you and I would be excited to tune in to a LIV event that's being played somewhere in Hong Kong or somewhere and I can't wait to tune in and watch that event. No, still nobody really cares who wins that event. So
I've never one time thought to go looking for it. And I am watching, maybe I'm a weirdo here because with the departures, I don't know, maybe you can tell me if the business of the sport, the television ratings are suffering because DeChambeau and Koepka and Dustin Johnson and Mickelson and guys like that aren't around for, Arnold's tournament or whatever. But I'm watching more golf content than I've ever watched, and I like DeChambeau and Koepka just fine as players. I'll look forward to watching them play this week at Augusta. I have never one time thought what channel is the LIV thing on?
Yeah, I agree. And LIV now has got some access to Fox. They've got the deal there with them, but there's still the problem that when you're looking at ratings in the United States, when you're playing in Australia, you're playing in Hong Kong, or you're playing in wherever, no one's thinking to tune into golf at 2 a.m. to watch these events. So,
right.
It's not, you're not going to get good ratings. The PGA Tour events this year are slightly up. I know last year they took kind of a dive and people were wondering if that was a piece of it. And I think there was a little fatigue with the LIV stuff, but they're back up a little bit more this year. I also think because in some of these events you're getting bigger draws to draw people in. McIlroy's had an outstanding start to the season here, heading into the first major. So He wins the Players Championship. He wins one of the biggest non-big events, like at the Pebble Beach. He wins there. So some of these events where people are going to want to watch, regardless, you also have star power at the top. So I think that's helped maybe the ratings for at least for 2025 go up slightly.
Brian, I've already tweeted out the list here because we've only got less than 5 minutes here to run through it here. You already mentioned Rory's been playing well. Let me ask you about Scheffler. I mean, the list is already the list. I'm taking Scotty, so you're not going to talk me out of him. Not that I'm expecting you to necessarily, but what kind of form do you think his game is in? Watching as much as I've been watching, I feel like there have been at least a couple of Sundays where he's back by a few shots. He starts hot on Sunday, like, oh, here we go. He's going to make a charge, and then it just sort of gets away from him on the back nine, and like that's that, and he finishes fifth or something. What kind of form do you think Scotty's in?
I think it's okay. I don't think it's as good as it was last year, where he came in where he had, I think, 4 wins already at this point. And this year he doesn't have one, but he has been playing well. I think that overall, when you look at what he's been doing, I think it's that he's still not putting as well. I think that's kind of his storyline for the last 2 years, is that when he putts well, he blows away the field. When he putts average, he still has a chance to win. When he putts below average, he's still in contention. So, like, there's no reason not to ever think that he can't win any week. Even when he's having a down week, I think that he can still win regardless. But Augusta is all about precision in terms of where you're placing the ball, what areas to avoid. He's so good at that. So if he just has an average putting week, there's no reason why he can't win for the 3rd time in 4 years.
Well, the picks are going to go like this. For folks who aren't keeping notes on this, right? The bet works this way. Brian, myself, and Mike take turns through the 4 majors every year. One of us picks 10 golfers. The other 2 get the field. Is it the top 3, right? Top 3.
Top 3 betting favorites.
Favorites only get like a half a payout, and then 4 through 20, right? Is it 20? Get the full payout, and then beyond the top 20, if you pick someone who wins, you get double the payout. So I've got 2 of each, 2 halves and 2 doubles, and then I've got myself 6 guys in the middle tier. Scotty and Rory are going to be my 2 picks up top. I'm going to take Tom Kim and Matthew Fitzpatrick on the double payout territory. I was bummed out that Minwoo Lee was right on the edge there. He's like tied for 20th in the odds, and I feel like that has to mean he's in the top 20. So my middle tier full payout group, I'll go backwards through the odds. Minwoo Lee, McIntyre, I've got Koepka, Morikawa, DeChambeau, and Oberg are my 6 full payout contestants here. Maybe most interesting would be the long shots. What do you think of Kim or Fitzpatrick as choices here?
I like Kim. I think he's definitely a guy that has the talent to win. We know last year he came close to winning some bigger tournaments, then eventually did break through with a win. I think that he's a guy that could do well for you. I'm looking at your picks. Honestly, I feel like if it was my turn to pick this week, I feel like there's at least 7 that I would have gone with the same. I 100% would have taken both Scotty and Rory. I think DeChambeau, out of the live guys, if I'm taking any of them, he would probably be one. I know there's a lot of talk about Joaquin Niemann this week because he's had the best year on live. Phil Mickelson, I guess in some sense was joking, said, "Oh, he's number 1 ranked in the world," or whatever, but because he's been playing so well on live, he's going to be ranked number 1 in the world. No, he's not, but he, Mickelson pumping up live thought that he should be, but DeChambeau, because he just hits it so far, I think that you can overpower this course, and you can have an opportunity to kind of. Well, I was saying about shots into the green. You have to know where to go on the green and where not to. But when you're hitting wedges in all day because he hits it so far, that it kind of lends itself to be able to be more precise. So I like that pick. Koepka is almost impossible to predict because he's such a bull in majors, and he just got that attitude that he could show up and win and no one would be surprised. But his game is just kind of lately, from what I was reading from his live tour events. But I can't see picking against him. McIntyre I like a lot. Lefties always play well. If you're looking for other players like that are in that middle range, McIntyre I like Brian Harmon, who won last week. Lefties seem to play Augusta National well because of just the shape of the holes there. And Minwoo Lee is a pick I would have thought about too. So I like where you went with that.
Yeah. Batia might have been a pick. We mentioned this lefty thing here. I thought about him too, but didn't get there. All right, I'm sorry we had to cut this so short. I hope our schedules will align. I know tomorrow we've got the Sabres in pregame at 6, but hopefully we can get you in tomorrow and Friday to look at what has happened in the first couple of rounds here so far.
Yep, sounds great.
All right.
Talk tomorrow.
That's our Brian Koziel on the Western Hotline previewing the Masters. We'll hit up a timeout here. Back for more right after this on WGR.
Got something to say? Say
in fact, and then into the next hour, too. Want to remind you all to tune in for our annual pre-draft special a week from tomorrow, Thursday, April 17th, from 4 to 6:30 p.m. We'll be streaming live on YouTube and on the Twitch where the kids are and all that, right? We'll bring you the latest insights and mock draft predictions, insider information, and guest appearances from our whole crew here, Jeremy White and Joe DiBiase from our morning show, Nate Geary, as well as Sal Capaccio. Speaking of Nate, he's scheduled to be in with me on Friday. Mike has a scheduled day off there. Anyway, the show is presented, our draft special is presented by your Upstate Honda dealers. Visit your local Upstate Honda dealer today for excellent deals on the entire Honda lineup, including the all-new Honda Passport. All right, we are already up against the clock again because, as I said to Brian, I don't know how to tell time. So we'll hit up a break here. And, hey, speaking of the draft, our dude Chris Trapasso, his weekly visit, we'll get that for you straight ahead as we continue. Mike is off today along with Zach Jones. I am the Bulldog, and this is WGR.
Call or text